This video is an introduction to Hystrix, and how it's used, with Edmunds REST APIs. In this example, for the make model year page to render, it needs to call several dependency REST services. To get TMV, the page calls pricing REST service. As requests are being made to pricing REST, assume a major GC cycle starts in pricing REST. This makes the CPU spike to 100%, slowing down calls to pricing REST. All the Tomcat threads of vehicle research application are used up, waiting for response from pricing REST. The make model year page isn't rendered to the user. Setting network timeouts help, but doesn't prevent pricing REST from being pounded with requests, thus not giving it enough time to recover. If the issue persists long enough, it might again lead to issue of page error. With Hystrix, we can set thread pool limits for each dependency of an application, in addition to the thread timeouts. If underlying dependency has slowness issues or if it's throwing error, Hystrix breaks the circuit to that dependency, preventing further calls to the dependency, till the time it recovers. In our example, when pricing REST thread pool limit is reached, the circuit is open, preventing further calls to it. This will help us from using up all vehicle research application threads, and render the page without TMV. This will be a degraded experience to the user, but better than not rendering the page at all. It's sometimes ideal to set the thread pool limits and timeouts based on the endpoints, and not for the whole REST application. In the previous scenario, we saw that the page was rendered but, without TMV. Hystrix allows us to configure a fallback when the circuit is open, as TMV is critical for the page. If we configure a fallback to call the backup environment, we can render the page with the TMV, even though pricing web in live production is broken. Once pricing REST recovers, Hystrix automatically closes the circuit, and reroutes calls to pricing REST, in live production. Hystrix breaks the circuit on these criteria. All of these parameters are configurable. With this simple formula we can calculate the thread pool size for each of the dependency or endpoint. Setting timeouts in most cases is also straightforward, but in some cases we'll need to account for retries. Remember, the timeouts should be based on round-trip time from the caller to callee, and not on server times. Hystrix by default will be turned on for REST client in this range in the near future. The core Hystrix code lies within the REST client library but is configured for each service client. To enable Hystrix, set Hystrix enabled flag on the template factory for that service client. Thread pool limit and timeouts can be configured per endpoint as shown. We build a small servlet filter, which can intercept REST requests and introduce delays and errors in REST services. We built this to test Hystrix in QA. Let's look at a short demo of Hystrix. By default, all Hystrix integrated apps will generate metric which we can monitor in the Hystrix dashboard. Let's look at the Incentive REST Web Hystrix dashboard. Incentive REST calls region REST for some of its calculation, which is now wrapped up with the Hystrix command. The dashboard shows that the circuit is closed and several other useful metrics. We see that the Edmunds Chaos Monkey has been disabled from his status call. The error percentage shown here on reaching 20 will make Hystrix break the circuit. We are inducing some 500 errors in region REST which incentive calls. We see error percentage in the dashboard increasing and reaching 20, and immediately see the circuit open status and no more calls are sent to region REST. To make the demo short, we are introducing a huge 10 seconds delay. We see error percentage increasing and the circuit is broken when it reaches 20. Here we see an example of Pricing Web, which is an aggregate REST application. Make several calls to vehicle REST application. Hystrix here is configured at an endpoint level. Each endpoint has a thread pool limit and timeout, making it very flexible. We are currently testing Hystrix in QA11 with some of the vehicle and region applications. Thanks you for listening. Please post your question or suggestions to the REST Services Slack channel.